Welcome to the Super Healthy Human podcast with Dr. Rodger Murphree.
Welcome. Hi, I'm Dr. Rodger Murphree, your fibrodoctor.com, author of Treating and Beating Fibromyalgia and Chronic Syndrome, Heart Disease, which your doctor won't tell you, and Treating and Beating Anxiety and Depression with Orthomolecular Medicine. For the last 2 or 3 weeks, I've been sharing information about how to increase your energy, something that's really has a challenge for my patients, whether it's chronic illness like fibromyalgia or type 2 diabetes, or even some of my cardiovascular patients in the past. But I'm a board-certified nutritional specialist, board-certified chiropractic physician, functional medicine practitioner. I was in private practice for 34 years, 25 of those years, last 25, pausing in fibromyalgia. And one of the things that I loved was educating others, because if I can educate you or whomever to know how to take care of themselves, then you're so far ahead of the game. Most people have to rely on going to the doctor, and whatever he or she tells them, that's what they do. So I really love being able to educate people and allowing them to be their own advocate and to try to do the best they can to get healthy and stay that way. So tonight, a lot of stuff. I'm going to be going over a lot of things. You can find out some of the blogs and some of the material. There's a free report for the thyroid at yourfibrodoctor.com. If you go there, if you look up in the right-hand corner there, you'll see patient resources. And if you'll click that, then click on health conditions, and you'll see that there's one on thyroid. When we talk a little bit about adrenal fatigue, I talked about that last week, a little bit about that, but thyroid and adrenal go hand in hand. Thyroid is the master metabolism. Produces your energy for your metabolism. And so you're going to see how that affects your energy or lack of energy. I'm going to go through that. Last week, we talked about the importance of deep restorative sleep. We talked about adrenal fatigue. We talked about diet. The thyroid gland is this gland that sits right here. It's like a butterfly, and it sits right here under your Adam's apple, right here. And it's really not that large of an organ, but it's incredibly important. And it's responsible for releasing thyroid hormones, which hormones travel through the bloodstream and they deliver messages. They turn things on or turn things off. And they use the bloodstream as their highway to get to where they're supposed to. But the thyroid produces these hormones that influence every cell in the body. Every cell is dependent on thyroid hormones. And to the degree that your thyroid is healthy and producing these hormones at the right levels, then you'll find that your cells are working at the right level. When your thyroid is compromised, you start to develop problems. So, because your thyroid controls every cell in the body, every system in the body, every function in the body, including heart rate, your body weight, pain threshold, circadian rhythm, your sleep-wake cycle, body temperature, helping to regulate your blood pressure, digestion, elimination, your immune system, you name it, building bones, you name it, thyroid hormones are responsible for making these things happen. So we look at the importance of the thyroid. It controls your metabolism. So what is metabolism? Metabolism is cellular energy. It's the amount of energy your cells and therefore your different organs and systems have, therefore what you have. So your metabolism controls how well, how poorly you experience having energy. Do you have stamina? You have resistance to stress? Are you able to do things and continue on even though you start to become a little bit fatigued? The metabolism is cellular energy that's responsible for taking the foods that you eat and those calories and turning them into energy, taking the nutrients that you get in your protein foods and turning those amino acids that are in the proteins and making protein for the body to be able to use. Your thyroid is just super, super important. It's one of the most important organs that we have. And it's certainly probably the most important organ for regulating your energy. So there's 2 main thyroid hormones. There's T4 and T3. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but those are the 2 main hormones. And T3 hormone is a combination of the amino acid L-tyrosine and 3 iodine molecules. And T4 is a combination of L-tyrosine and 4 iodine molecules. Now, L-tyrosine comes from a protein. Every time you eat protein, you're eating the amino acids, the building blocks that make the protein look and taste the way it does. It changes the shape and function, or changes the chemical look of the actual protein, but amino acids will make up a protein. And L-tyrosine, one of the essential amino acids, you have to get it in your diet, is responsible for helping you to be able to make these thyroid hormones. So if you have a deficiency in protein deficiency, or you have a problem with some things I've talked in the past lectures about malabsorption or reflux or irritable bowel, where you're not digesting your proteins. Maybe you don't have low stomach acid, so you're not producing pancreatic enzymes to break apart the protein and get the amino acids that you need. You can start to have problems just from your diet. It can be just from your diet. 80% of hormones, thyroid hormones, are T4, 7% are T3. So that leaves 13% or something else, right? What is that? I'm going to get to that here in a minute. But 80% is T4. But here's the thing. T4 is your inactive thyroid hormone. T3 is the active hormone. You could live without T4, but you could not live without T3. T4 triggers T3 to work. T3 is the active hormone. As long as you got T3, you're okay. 80% of T3 comes from the conversion of T4 into the more active T3. 20% of T4 becomes active in the intestines. This is really interesting, provided there's enough good bacteria, good probiotics. Now, it's not only probiotics, and I certainly recommend you take probiotics, but you have this gut-brain connection. So your microbiome, which is the GI environment, so it's bacteria, good bacteria, bad bacteria, fungus, fungi or yeast, those cells in your gut are communicating with your brain. What's happening is it's sending messages to your brain to convert this T4. But if you have leaky gut, or you have irritable bowel, or you have malabsorption, um, or you're constipated, you don't break down your foods, or you have reflux, you have no stomach acid, I talked and linked about that. You're going to not be able to produce these thyroid hormones that you need to. The conversion of T4 into T3 takes place in the liver. That's another thing that's very fascinating. Unfortunately, a number of my patients over the years have a thing called fatty liver, which that is becoming an epidemic. More and more people have it, don't even know they have a fatty liver. When you're gaining too much weight, you start to have fatty deposits placed in the liver, and that will compromise the liver's ability to turn T4 into T3. And remember, you can live without T4, but you can't live without T3. So anything that blocks the conversion of T4 to T3 can set up problems with low energy. And just the fact that the liver's not working correctly can also create all sorts of problems, chemical sensitivities, any reactions, numerous things can start to show up. So T4 needs to be converted into T3, and then T4 is able to convert, provided that you've got the good bacteria. So we're not going to, I got to be careful. I don't go into too much nerd talk, but I don't want to make this so simple-minded that you don't really learn something. So I'm going to try to keep it so it's not too technical. And at the same time, I want you to kind of get this. So you have these things called antibodies. So you're familiar with an antibody, right? Get exposed to a virus or a bacteria. Your body then releases certain white blood cells that then will remember what that foreign invader is, right? So that when you're exposed to it again, it knows to go and attack it. So it attaches an antibody, attaches a chemical memory to this, and that's how the body's able to fight off and protect you, these foreign invaders. But you have thyroid antibodies as well, TGB and TPO. We'll get to those in just a minute. And they're responsible for binding to the thyroid hormones and carrying them to the cells that they need to. But I'm going to talk to you a little bit about antibodies here coming up in just a minute. It's estimated that over 27 million Americans suffer from thyroid dysfunction. It's much higher than that. And I'm going to tell you why. Over 500,000 new cases of thyroid each year. Underdiagnosed, well underdiagnosed. And I'm going to tell you, even when it's diagnosed, it's oftentimes diagnosed incorrectly. But hypothyroid is low thyroid. That means everything slows down because your cells are not getting enough thyroid hormones. Hyperthyroid is known as Graves' disease. It's when your thyroid is producing too much thyroid hormone and it's overstimulating the cells, and it can create things like high blood pressure, high rapid heartbeat, weight loss. It can be very, very dangerous. Bone loss, all sorts of things start to show up. We're not going to talk about hyperthyroidism. We're going to talk about hypothyroidism, which really sabotages your energy. Symptoms of low thyroid. Low thyroid is really it's the great pretender. I mean, just about any chronic illness out there, you want to be looking to see, is the thyroid compromised? Is it part of the problem? One of the things that really sabotages thyroid function is stress. And really, stress is the catalyst for just about every illness, stress and inflammation. In 2 weeks, I'll be doing, if depending on how far we go this, I'll be doing a presentation on that in 2 weeks about diet and the fact that inflammation and stress are the two drivers and how to change that to have the best health possible that you could. But what brings on problems with thyroid is stress typically. And then these are some of the symptoms. So you can just see those. You can see there's quite a number of them: fatigue, headache, migraines, dry skin, swelling, lymphedema can start to show up, weight gain, cold hands and cold feet, tingling in your hands and feet, which is neuropathy, poor memory, hair loss. Oftentimes you'll see that people have hypothyroidism, low thyroid. They lose the lateral third of the eyebrows. The eyebrows start to thin out, start to lose body hair, certainly head hair. Uh, you see oftentimes people with a problem with their thyroid that when they get a little run down and tired, they lose their voice, so they get laryngitis. It can create anxiety. It certainly can create depression, joint pain, muscle pain, nerve pain, yellowing of the skin. That happens because you're not converting uh, beta carotene into vitamin A. So when you're eating a carrot and everything slows down in your metabolism, then you can't even metabolize eating a carrot. And so I had a patient several years ago, probably 20 years ago, came in my clinic, walked in, and she was orange. I mean, orange, not like a tan orange. I'm talking about orange. And we started talking. I was thinking, what in the world? And then I knew after talking to her for about 20 minutes, based on her symptoms, what she'd shared with me and what she'd gone through with other clinicians, it was so apparent that she had a problem with her thyroid. And sure enough, did the blood work and her thyroid was really in trouble. Carpal tunnel, uh, symptoms, let's see, problems of balance, equilibrium, constipation, myxedema, that's non-pitting edema. So start getting swelling in your ankles and feet. High blood pressure, but you can also have low blood pressure too. And I'll share with that here in a minute about with adrenal fatigue. Chest pain, hardening of the arteries, high cholesterol. So many of my patients over the years were told, hey, you need to be on cholesterol because your cholesterol is elevated. And the reason why their cholesterol was elevated is because their thyroid was not working correctly. So their metabolism was not working correctly. And the liver was not able to pump out that cholesterol and deal with it like it was supposed to. Once we got their thyroid turned around, their cholesterol numbers were normal. We saved them from probably years of being on a statin medication, which can be a disaster for some people with all the potential side effects of those medications. PMS, menstrual irregularities. I mean, basically, you kind of you name it: fibrocystic breast disease, polycystic ovary syndrome, reactive hypoglycemia, psoriasis, low immune function. That's a big one. So the thyroid is controlled by the hypothalamus and the pituitary, these two glands in the brain. Sorry, my brain is kind of tired from talking all day. But these two organs in the brain are responsible for helping to regulate the release of thyroid hormones when you need them. But if you're under a lot of stress, that can affect your hypothalamus. That's what I see in my fibromyalgia patients. They get under a lot of stress, and eventually their hypothalamus, which is supposed to be the body's little computer to regulate the different systems and reactions, it's sabotaged. It doesn't work correctly. So now it can't help with communicating with the immune system, with the sleep-wake cycle, with the digestive system, and everything just goes haywire. And that's why for fibromyalgia, you see so many odd symptoms that tend to multiply each year. It's an illness that most doctors don't understand. And mainly they don't realize that it's the hypothalamus that's being uh, compromised that then affects the rest of the body. Stress is the catalyst that brings that on. But short-term stress causes an elevation of cortisol, which then blocks the conversion of T4 to T3. And now you start to experience symptoms. But long-term stress depletes the nutrients needed to keep the thyroid hormones at peak level. So remember, I mentioned about L-tyrosine, the amino acid L-tyrosine. Stress can block that, but it also can block the other synergistic vitamins and minerals like selenium and the B vitamins, B2, B3, B6, vitamin A, vitamin C. Selenium should be on here. It's not. Maybe we'll see that here in a minute. But these are needed for the thyroid to be able to have the raw ingredients to work correctly. A deficiency in just about any of the B vitamins will contribute to a problem in low thyroid low levels of copper, magnesium, manganese, which those are notoriously low in most everybody in the Western Hemisphere. Just about everybody has a magnesium deficiency. Everybody has at least one B deficiency. You may be getting the RDA, the recommended dietary allowance, which I call the recommended disease allowance. It's just enough to keep you from getting scurvy or beriberi, but it's not enough really to make a difference in your health. Here we go. So selenium's needed for the conversion of T4 to T3. High blood levels of fatty acids can also inhibit conversion T4 T3. What are high fatty acids? So if you're running, if you got a really high cholesterol, I'm really not worried about that. But if your triglycerides are really elevated, that's a problem. That starts to put a monkey wrench in the machine, and things really start to be affected in a negative way, including brain cells communicating with one another, and you start to see problems with the thyroid not being able to function like it's supposed to. Iodine deficiency, you'll see this on the internet. Be careful. Yes, you need iodine. You're probably not getting as much as the government thinks you are, the FDA thinks we are, FTC, whoever that is. But iodine's needed, as you saw, right? You can test yourself to see, do you need iodine or not? And you can do that by taking a cotton ball and then putting some Lugol's iodine or betadine, which you can get at the pharmacy, right? That's what you put on a sore, scratch, as an antifungal, antimicrobial. You paint that on your stomach, and what you should see is the next day it should still be there. If it disappears within, you know, 12 to 16 hours or so, that's a sign your body really needs that iodine. And then you want to go get tested. And there's blood tests for that where you can get tested to see if that's true. And if so, then you need to replace that with an iodine supplement. I don't normally see that, but yes, you'll see that on the internet. So I want to bring it up. Here, you want to take a picture of this. So I'll write this down, but this is how you would test for that. But I want to caution you, we're going to get to this in just a minute. And again, I don't know how far we'll get. But one of the things with Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which is an autoimmune disease where the body is erroneously attacking the thyroid tissue, if you don't need iodine and you start supplementing with iodine, it makes that worse. So just a little bit of caution. I would self-test. And then if you want to know more, let's say it doesn't disappear, then you're good. But let's say it does disappear within that window of time, I would get a blood test to see, just to make sure. And I'd get a blood test on your thyroid, which I'm going to share with you exactly the lab work you need to get. You don't have to go through me. In fact, I'm not taking any patients, so you can't go through me. Past patients, if you're on here tonight, that doesn't include you. However, so that's how you would self-test. Antidepressants, especially selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, and even the older tricyclic antidepressants can compromise the thyroid from being able to work like it's supposed to. Interferon, methadone, synthetic estrogen. So if you're estrogen dominant, how many of you have had a hysterectomy, had fibroid tumors, had buildup tissue? I'm done drawing a blank. Endometriosis. Thank you. There it is. Usually it's because you've got too much estrogen and not enough progesterone. And that's what typically what happens too when you go and you get into perimenopause and say, oh, you don't have enough estrogen. Maybe not, but typically you've got such a low amount of progesterone compared to estrogen. Even though the estrogen's low, most doctors don't even look at progesterone. But every cell needs progesterone, not just the ovaries. God didn't make any mistakes. Every cell needs progesterone. So when you have that, when your ovaries taken, they put you on synthetic estrogen, then it can create problems. And one of the problems can be seen in compromising the thyroid. Certain foods. I wouldn't worry too much about this unless you had a goiter. What's a goiter? So goiter is a swelling of the thyroid because it's not getting enough iodine. If you have a goiter and you can feel this mushy little thing right here, might start having trouble swallowing. Yes, you might want to avoid the Brassica foods, but otherwise, these are some of the healthiest foods you can eat on the planet. They're really incredible, especially the Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, broccoli, cabbage, kale. If it's organic, kale needs to be organic. Otherwise, it's very highly treated and toxic. But those Brassilic foods are really important for your liver. Incredibly important. So we talked about your hypothalamus. It monitors all the different systems in the body, and it's supposed to regulate how much thyroid, how much metabolism, how much cellular energy you need. And it does that by monitoring anything that's going on. And when needed, it releases a hormone called thyroid-releasing hormone. What does thyroid-releasing hormone do? It causes the pituitary gland to secrete or release thyroid-stimulating hormone. And thyroid-stimulating hormone is typically what you would get in a blood work. So when you go have blood done, they'll check your TSH or thyroid-stimulating hormone. Depending on the level, they'll tell you either you have hypothyroidism or you don't. TSH goes up. This is important. You might want to take a picture of this. TSH goes up when you need more thyroid to be released. It goes down when you need less. So what's confusing when your doctor tells you, hey, I think, your TSH is a little off. what does that mean? What does that mean? Or they tell you, we think that your thyroid's a little low. Does that mean what? So you got to know what your TSH is. Okay. And we're going to go specifically, I'm going to tell you exactly what those numbers are here in just a minute. But TSH goes up when you need more thyroid and it goes down when you don't need as much. Okay. Thyroid peroxidase, TPO, is the other antibody along with TGB. And the release of TSH then triggers TPO to combine with iodine and hydrogen peroxide, creating T3 and T4. If you have Hashimoto's thyroiditis, this is compromised. I'll show you that in just a minute. But anything that disrupts TPO interferes with proper thyroid hormone production and lowers thyroid function. I'm going to show you how that works here in just a minute. So I'm going to switch gears real quick, and then we'll get into some more nitty-gritty about lab work. I want to share this with you because this is important. The symptoms of adrenal fatigue are very much a mirror of those of low thyroid. Fatigue, potential weight gain, high blood pressure, low blood pressure, orthostatic low blood pressure when you go from lying down to standing or sitting to standing to get lightheaded, nerve pain. Well, here's some of the cold hands, cold feet, tingling in your hands and feet, headaches, migraines, brain fog, low body temperature. These are symptoms we'd see in low thyroid. So the adrenals are very important and they can mirror what's going on as a thyroid problem. So you want to address this first. So the GAS, or general adaptation syndrome, there's 3 phases: fight or flight response. That's the initial reaction to any kind of stressor. Or adrenaline is released. So adrenaline gives you the ability to be able to handle that emergency stressor right there and then. Your stomach stops, you stop digesting food, your eyes get larger, the blood races from your stomach and other organs to go to your muscles to get you beefed up so that you can fight off. In caveman times, maybe you're fighting off some saber-toothed tiger, I don't know. Here, maybe you're fighting off somebody that's trying to get your wallet or your purse. But this is the initial reaction, and the pituitary is releasing ACTH, and this then causes your adrenal glands, your stress coping glands, to eventually start to release cortisol. But initially, it's adrenaline. But after that adrenaline wears off, and we've all gone through that, who's swerved and almost had an accident, and the adrenaline was going, took a while to settle down. Maybe you were in an accident or some kind of trauma, and it took you hours to kind of overcome that. That's the adrenaline that is released. But once that wears off, if you stay under stress, now the body starts releasing another hormone in the survival mechanism called cortisol. Cortisol helps us have more stamina and resiliency to stress. So anytime we're under stress, real or imagined, doesn't even matter. You could be in a movie, it's not real, but here comes the zombies and the cortisol is being released. Your heart's going up, your blood pressure goes up. The body doesn't know what's real and what's not. The biochemistry is happening. But cortisol then is initiated, and that gives you the ability to handle stress long-term. However, if that long-term stress continues being long-term too long, now you deplete your ability to release this stress coping hormone called cortisol, and now you start to have the symptoms that I mentioned earlier, that I shared with you earlier, all those symptoms that would mirror what you'd see in thyroid. So it's there's resistance reactions allows the body to endure chronic stress. But once you run out of it, once you become deficient, now you start to have low energy. Mentally, you're challenged. You start to see that your immune system may be compromised. You might start gaining weight. All these things that we don't want associated with low energy. So we've gone through all this. The best way to test for adrenal fatigue is to work with a functional medicine practitioner and get to get a 4-sample saliva test and then an early morning blood test done. However, before you do that, why don't you do a self-test, see where you're at, save some money. I'm all for you saving some money. And you can do that by taking your blood pressure lying down. So you take your blood pressure lying down, and you can use an automated blood pressure cuff if you want to, it doesn't matter. But then you want to take your blood pressure again, standing up. And when you stand up, you want to take it within 30 seconds, and make sure you got your left arm out in front of you, perpendicular at heart level. Take your blood pressure again after standing up. What you should see is that top number should go up. That systolic number should go up from, let's say it's 110 over 80 lying down. It should go up 120 or so. If it doesn't go up or barely goes up, that's a sign of adrenal fatigue, and you would benefit starting on repairing your adrenals first. And I'll show with you how you do that. So for my patients, what they did, now when I had my medical practice, I shared that earlier when I introduced myself, when I had medical doctors, under my direction, we would just put people on Cortef. Cortef is 1/5 the strength of prednisone, what you might get with a sinus infection or low back, throw your low back out or whatever, where you get, a dose pack or a shot. It's incredibly safe, used like the body intends it. So cortisol itself, you can still get that hydrocortisone and it's safe. It won't cause the side effects that prednisone and some of these heavier duty synthetic cortisone products will, like weight gain, water retention, bone loss, immune compromise, those kind of things. Nobody, affect your sleep, all those kind of things. When I sold my medical practice and I didn't have medical doctors to rely on, I couldn't do the prescriptions. Then I did the research and what early on in the early 1920s, 1930s actually 1940s, I guess 1930s into the 1940s, World War I, and even in the 50s, they were using oh, my brain, I just lost the word, but they were using extracts from animals, from pigs. And they still make some thyroid hormones come from pig thyroid. I know, I know you don't not want to hear this, but genetically pigs have we're the closest to pigs as far as hormonally. So early on, they came up and they started using ACE. Is it ACE? I can't think of it. Goodness gracious! But what it was is they would take this from pigs and they would give this to their patients, and then their adrenal glands would come back online. This is what more than likely, this is what Kennedy used, even in the 60s, probably maybe by then we had synthetic, but early on for a number of years, for a number of decades, we just used something similar to the adrenal cortex, much stronger, definitely much stronger. The adrenal cortex comes from cattle raised in organic grass-fed cattle in New Zealand, so it's a very clean product, but it is an animal-based product. So if you're a vegan, you're not going to want to take this because it does have animal product in there. And I've been using this adrenal cortex product that I had made specially for me for almost 2 decades, no issues. But what you'd want to do is you want to start off taking 1 capsule at breakfast and 1 at lunch. Give it a week, see how you feel. Are you feeling more energetic? Do you have more stamina? Can you do more without crashing? Do you feel like mentally you're a little sharper? Is it giving you that energy? Then recheck your blood pressure, see what it's like lying down, standing up. You can also test for adrenal function by going into a dark bathroom, covering one eye, by looking in the mirror, shine a pin light in the other eye. What you should see is the pupil should constrict. It should get smaller. If it dilates, that's a sign of adrenal fatigue. So you want to self-test after a couple of weeks. Is it better? Is it worse? Is it any different? If you're not noticing any difference, then I'd go to a higher dose. So I'd go to 2 at breakfast, 1 at lunch. Give it a little time. See how you're doing. I have some patients are taking 6 a day. And it's the only way they can keep their levels up. And we check it periodically by blood work to make sure that their levels are up. So that's how you would do that. But I would do this first. How many of you are taking thyroid medication and you've tried to change maybe to Armour Thyroid or Westroid, which is a combination of T4, T3. So it's a more natural form of thyroid medication. Levothyroxine and Synthroid are synthetic T4. It's got to convert to T3. But as you've seen, you may have a block in your ability to convert T4 to T3. But some people try to make that switch, or some people even try to increase their dose of Synthroid and levothyroxine, and they get irritable, or their heart rate goes up, or they break out in a sweat. They feel terrible. It's not that they don't need more medication. It's not that they wouldn't probably benefit from being on a different type of thyroid medication, which was a combination of T3, T4, which I think is superior, not for everybody, but for certainly a minority of people. But what they are finding out is because their adrenal glands are so compromised, when they try to increase their metabolism, their body can't handle it. So the first thing I always tell my patients to do is start to work on your adrenal glands first. So you would take the adrenal cortex, and then also encourage you to take a good multivitamin with high doses of vitamin C and B vitamins and the synergistic ingredients you need for the body to be able to make cortisol, help you with cortisol, and also to help with stress. So my patients with fibromyalgia are encouraged to take the Fibro formula, which is a multivitamin, multivitamin with all kind of things in there, amino acids, CoQ10, 4,000 IUs of vitamin D3, the vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, malic acid. It's a whole bunch of stuff there. But I encourage my fibromyalgia patients to take that. If you don't have fibromyalgia, then take a good multivitamin. Just make sure you're taking a good multivitamin so you're getting those synergistic ingredients. But this is how you start to repair your adrenal glands, by adding this. Hashimoto's, we got time. I'm going to go real quick because I want to share with you the blood work, the exact blood work that I would encourage you to get. So Hashimoto's thyroiditis is an autoimmune disease where the body is attacking the thyroid tissue. Something initiates this reaction to where the body now perceives the thyroid cells and tissue as a foreign invader, a virus, a bacteria, something that should not be there. And it doesn't turn off. So this is an autoimmune disease like rheumatoid arthritis or Sjogren's or some of these other things. In this case, we're talking about something that's attacking the thyroid and compromising the thyroid function. The symptoms are the same as I mentioned earlier for regular thyroid. You can see them right there, everything that I mentioned earlier. In most cases, Hashimoto's thyroiditis, it's a steady, slow, gradual attack on your thyroid. But eventually, if it's not addressed, it will burn your thyroid out. In other words, it attacks it day in, day out. And eventually, you have no thyroid tissue left. At that point, you have to go on thyroid medication when it's eventually caused. But most people are never develop overreactive thyroid blood work. So when they go to their doctor, their blood work looks okay. But the reason why their blood work's okay, because they're not doing a thorough blood work panel. I'm going to share with you here what that is. But most doctors are looking at TSH, so they're not checking for thyroid antibodies. That's why I mentioned those antibodies earlier. If your antibodies are elevated, that's a sign of Hashimoto's thyroiditis. But it may take 10 years before it ever causes your TSH to bottom out. And now they go, oh, or sometimes even go up, and they go, oh, you need to be on thyroid medication. They're not testing for it, so they don't even know. This is, people go to their doctor every 6 months or so, and they're going back, and they're no better. They have all the symptoms of low thyroid, and the doctor says, oh, let's check your thyroid, and it comes back normal. It's because they're not doing a thorough testing. Conventional medicine typically will not treat elevated thyroid antibodies, even if they do test for them. Why? Why is it? Because they have nothing to help with it. All they can do is wait till your thyroid burns out. And then when your TSH goes up, remember when your TSH goes up, it's a sign your body's saying, hey, I need more thyroid hormones. When your conventional doctor, he or she sees that, now they'll go, okay, you have hypothyroidism. I can put you on Synthroid or levothyroxine. But until then, they don't do anything. In functional medicine, we don't want to wait for that, because if you wait on that, the thyroid is burned out. You've got 10 years of misery of all the symptoms with no help. And now you're going to be on thyroid medication the rest of your life. If you need to be on medication, there's nothing wrong with that. But wouldn't it be better to go ahead and solve that 10 years earlier, right? So in conventional medicine, they don't know what to do with that. In functional medicine, we're always asking, what's the underlying cause of your symptom? A symptom is nothing more than a warning sign. It's your body telling you, hey, we got a problem. There's a problem here. Most of the time, people will try to ignore those symptoms. We all do it. In the conventional world, in the conventional medical practice, not to step on anybody's toes, but just kind of the way it is, it's about, if you've got a symptom, let's suppress it, right? If you got high blood pressure, we're going to put you on blood pressure medication. You got type 2 diabetes, we're going to put you on insulin or something, metformin or something to help with that. But the diabetes is a result of poor diet and type 2 diabetes and carrying around too much weight. High blood pressure, not always, certainly not always, but is a byproduct a lot of times of carrying around too much weight. We're not addressing that. We're just putting somebody on a drug. Well, we want to look at what's the underlying cause. If every time it rains, you have a puddle of fluid, puddle of rain on your kitchen floor every time it rains, you can keep mopping that up every time that happens and cleaning everything up. But eventually there's going to be a price to pay because you're treating the symptoms on the wet floor. But if you keep doing that long enough, now the floor is going to rot, the cabinets are going to get mold. Eventually the ceiling's going to cave in. You're going to have to move out, right? Wouldn't it make more sense just to fix the hole in the ceiling? That's the beauty of functional medicine. It's about finding and fixing the underlying causes of your symptoms, whether that's carrying around too much weight or sleep because your adrenals not working correctly, your thyroid's not correctly. And then the question is, if your thyroid's not working correctly, why? Well, one of the reasons why is Hashimoto's. So what's causing Hashimoto's? Well, it can be from polycystic PCOS. And this can trigger autoimmune thyroiditis. So if you've got PCOS, this can be one of the causes of it. Low progesterone, I mentioned elevated estrogen. So high estrogen, even if it's not even high, but it's so much higher than the low progesterone level, that can cause Hashimoto's. if you've had a hysterectomy, if you've had endometriosis, if you've had fibrotumors, more than likely you were and probably still are estrogen dominant. Lab work can tell you that. Chemicals, just in, environmental toxins can cause problems with the thyroid working correctly and trigger this autoimmune reaction. Estrogen, progesterone. So 75% of autoimmune disease occur in women, most frequently during childbearing years. We think there's a relationship with estrogen and progesterone. We still don't know. However, I really would encourage you to know what those numbers are. If you have Hashimoto's, know what that is. These are other triggers, low vitamin D. Make sure your vitamin D level is above 50. They'll tell you as long as it's above 30, it's good. The Vitamin D Council that was been around really did all the research to finally get doctors in the conventional world to say, hey, there is an issue with vitamin D3, which is a hormone. We call it a vitamin. It's really a hormone. If it's low, your immune system will be compromised. Your pain threshold goes down. Your mental clarity goes down. You're more likely to feel anxious, and it also can increase your risk of certain diseases. So you want your vitamin D level to be above 50. Gluten intolerance. Not everybody has a problem with gluten, but some people do. And you don't have to test positive for celiac disease, by the way. You could just be sensitive to it. So every time you eat gluten, it gives you a negative reaction. The body thinks it's being attacked. It's the protein in the gluten. So it's that can create problems. Infectious disease. Hashimoto's can be triggered by Epstein-Barr virus, by mono, by herpes virus, by other things where the body is attacking the virus or the bacteria that gets confused and mistakes the thyroid tissue as the microbial, and then now you develop Hashimoto's. So there's the different triggers. There's the viral triggers. You can see some of those. So what you're looking for is those thyroid antibodies. When they're elevated, that's a sign that you're in the beginning of Hashimoto's and you need to take some action. So TPO attacks an enzyme normally found in your thyroid gland called thyroid peroxidase, sabotages the ability of the thyroid to be able to work correctly. TGB attacks a key protein in the thyroid gland and it's essential for the conversion. So either one of those can cause Hashimoto's thyroiditis. Elevated TPO or TGB, it means you have the beginning of Hashimoto's. Doesn't matter what your TSH number is. Now, can be kind of complicated. I go into much more detail in my fibromyalgia book. You can get that. It's out of stock. I don't know if I'm going to reprint that. I'm working on another book, but you can get it at yourfibrostore.com. You can get an ebook. I don't know, I think it's like $10 or something for the ebook if you have a Kindle or a reader. And there's a whole chapter all about Hashimoto's thyroiditis and exactly step by step what to do. So you can order that online at yourfibrostore.com. You're either Th1 dominant or Th2 dominant when you have Hashimoto's. So Th1 is the initial response to a foreign invader. So this is more about, helper cells trying to protect you from some type of virus or something that the body thinks shouldn't be there in your body. And it releases inflammatory chemicals, hormones, interleukin-2 and tumor necrosis factor A. Th2 is a delayed reaction and it's a little different. So let me just quickly, most people are going to be Th1 dominant. And if you're Th1 dominant, then there's an antioxidant combination. There's an antioxidant combination that I use that's been researched and other practitioners use as well that will start to change this, that will start to help to reverse this problem with elevated TPO. That's called we'll see. I think I got a slide on it. About 10% are going to respond better to an antiviral formula that I developed or something similar. You don't have to, but that's going to have these all natural echinacea, golden seal, berberine, and some of these other things in there. They're going to help to suppress and turn around this problem with Th2. I start everybody on this unless I test them. So if I'm testing them through blood work, I can figure this out through blood work. It's can be kind of costly sometimes depending, but you don't have to do that. So you can start with what I recommend for Th1, give it a week. Do you feel better? Do you feel worse? But I'd only take this if you knew you had Hashimoto's. So you got to get tested if you don't know. If after a week of being on the TH support, that's what we call it right there. There it is. If after a week or so on this, you feel bad and that's what you'll notice, then you would go to the viral formula and you would use this. This you take one twice a day. This one you take one 3 times a day. I'm sorry. They're both one twice a day. They're both one twice a day. Yep. Okay. But that's Hashimoto's. Let me go into a little more detail. So let's talk about thyroid blood tests as I start to wrap everything up here. You want to get a full thyroid panel. If you don't, you really don't know what's going on. It's a guesstimation. So you want to take a screenshot of this. This is what you want to get. Your doctor's not going to do this, but this is what you want to get ideally. You want to check for TSH. You want to check for free and total T4 and free and total T3. Your TSH may be normal, but you may not have enough T3, or you may not have enough T4 to convert into T3. You may have elevated TPO or TGB antibodies. How would you know that if your doctor doesn't order these tests? The other thing that I haven't mentioned is I've shared with you that you got to get a conversion. It's probably in here. Here it is. So you've got to get a conversion of T4 to T3, right? I mentioned earlier, what is the number one cause of low thyroid, and in particular Hashimoto's? It's stress. The other thing that stress can initiate is a blockage of T4 converting into T3, because when you get under too much stress, and everybody's different, everybody has a different threshold, but when you get under too much stress and the body experiences that, it's going to try to hang on to everything it can, slow everything down so you're not burning up any energy that you need to save. And to do that, it starts to release reverse T3. Remember I said that T4 was 80, right? T3 is 13. What was the other 7? It's reverse T3. So anytime you're under stress, you run the risk that reverse T3 goes up. It's going to block the conversion of T4 to T3. And this is a common thing that's seen with people on thyroid medication. So if you're on Synthroid or levothyroxine, synthetic T4, you go to your doctor and he or she does the blood work, looks at the TSH and says, oh, that looks good, you're fine. The problem is, because they're not checking for reverse T3, they don't realize that it's not even converting. So you're telling them, my hair's still falling out, I'm gaining weight, and not everybody has to gain weight with low thyroid, by the way. That's a misconception, but it's common. It is common. I have no energy. I barely get out of bed. My cholesterol's it's out of sight. All these things that we would associate with low thyroid that you were put on the medication for, you still have, because it's not converting and they're not testing you for that. So you want to get a reverse T3. Let's go back to this. So these are the tests right there. You can go to any lab test now. Google it, look in your area and see if you can go to it to get your own test done. Get your own test done. Then using my book, you can interpret those tests. But go get your own test done. Your doctor's not going to run a reverse T3 unless they're a functional medicine practitioner like I am. They're not even going to know really much about that. They're not going to run antibodies. The reason why they won't run antibodies until your TSH is elevated, because they don't know, there's nothing to tell you. They just tell you, hey, we're going to watch it. How many of you heard that? How many of you had thyroid nodules, which also could be the beginning of Hashimoto's, and they tell you, oh, we're just going to watch that. And they don't tell you to start to fix the Hashimoto's. So you want to work on that. And I can't go into detail. It can be kind of can be a problem. Let's look at the blood work. This is a screenshot right here. So what your TSH should be is below 3.0. Should be between, this says 1.8. I'm a little more aggressive. I would say between 1 and 3. Traditional lab range is 0.5 to 5.5. So let's say you go, now this 2013, the American College of Endocrinology came out and said, look, if your TSH is above 3.0, you have hypothyroidism. You should be on thyroid medication. Years ago, they would wait till it was above 10. Some of you may remember that. Then it got down to 8, then it got down to 7. Now it's down to 5. Some labs will be down to 4. But in functional medicine, we're looking at how well or how poorly your different systems are working. We want optimal ranges. The optimal range for your TSH is between 1 and 3. If you go to your doctor and you've got all these symptoms of low thyroid, and you go to her and she does a blood work and she says, oh, you're fine. Your TSH is at 4.8. You're within normal. It's below 5.5. No, you need to be on thyroid medication. And this happens even with endocrinologists, by the way, not just family practitioners, other people. But you want to get that TSH, you want it to be below 3.0. If you're on thyroid medication, you tend to do better when it's around 2.0 or down to 1.0. You have to work with your doctor about that and let he or she decide that with you. But just know that if you pull your blood work out, and if you see that your TSH is above 3 and you're not being treated for hypothyroidism, the boat is being missed. Okay. So that's the blood work there. Now, if you have hypothyroidism or you have an elevated reverse T3, what I put my patients on is an over-the-counter. This is another animal product. So this comes from grass-fed cattle, and it comes from their thyroid gland. And what they do is they eliminate the T4. There's no T4 hormones in this supplement, but there is T3. That's how it can be sold over the counter. If it had T4 in it, it would be a drug. Because it's a glandular and it has only T3 in it, it can be sold and is sold over the counter. And there's other ones out there as well. But this glandular is what I use with my patients to help them to reverse T3. So if they've got an elevated reverse T3 in their blood work, and or if they have an elevated TSH, or they just need some more thyroid because maybe they're on levothyroxine or whatever, and their TSH is at 4.5 or 5.5 and their doctor won't do anything. This is what I put my patients on. And I get them just to start with one a day, take it first thing in the morning on an empty stomach. If you're combining it with your other medication, like levothyroxine or Synthroid, then you want to take it at the same time away from food. You want to get your blood tested. At some point when you start this, because it will change your blood work. So you want to know that, okay? You want to know that it will change blood work. It will also change how you feel, how you look. You'll start growing hair, start having energy, all the things that you want because your thyroid is starting to work again. And you can do over-the-counter supplementation. If you want to do thyroid prescription, that's fine too. I have no problem with that. That's a hormone replacement. That's not like a drug. If you need to be on thyroid hormones and it's working, stay on thyroid hormones. You can self-test for low thyroid. It can give you an idea. I think I shared this previously. So you can take your temperature while in bed, take a mercury thermometer or basal thermometer, shake it down, put it underneath your arm and your armpit, leave it there for 10 minutes and do that over a 7-day period. Take the 7-day average. If it's 97.8 or above, you're good. If it's below that, you have low metabolism, probably have a problem with your thyroid. Then you could do it. You could start taking over-the-counter thyroid. If you wanted to do that, you certainly could. And you can also get blood work done just to validate what's going on. So I'm not doing this. So we already went through that. You want to maybe take a picture of that real quick just to see what your functional medicine lab range, which should be between, this is 1.8. For me, it's 1.0 to 3.0. Let me go back. So if it's below 1.0, what is that? That's hyper. You got too much thyroid. And Hashimoto's can go back and forth. So one day you're burning up, the next day you're freezing. One day you're sweating, just sweating profusely. The next day, cold as ice. That's Hashimoto's going back and forth, burning out your thyroid. That's the slow death of your thyroid. Dr. Brodebans was the first one to show this relationship. He was an endocrinologist in the Netherlands, and he showed that by monitoring temperature, we could tell what's going on with metabolism and what's going on with your thyroid. He wrote a book that really is the Bible, if I can say that, for people treating thyroid in functional medicine called Hypothyroidism, the Unsuspected Illness. A fascinating read, great read. Might want to check it out. It's Dr. Brodebans. That's what I put my patients on right there. We talked about reverse T3. If you're on the email list, I'll put a little bit in there about the exact blood work parameters for T3, T4. But really the main one is TSH, and then the TPO and reverse T3. Those are the biggies. If you just got those, you could really get an idea of what's going on with your thyroid. So that's it.
Thanks for listening to Super Healthy Human with Dr. Rodger Murphree. Remember, your body is designed to heal. It just needs the right tools. Stay curious. Stay consistent. Stay super healthy. If this episode helped you, leave a review or share it with someone who's ready to take charge of their health. The information provided in this podcast is for educational purposes only and should not replace professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always consult your physician before making changes to your health regimen. This content does not substitute medical care.